and a little bit of valuation based on multiples, but today I want to kind of keep it light a little bit. What we mean by this is essentially the nature of the regimes. You can have dictatorial regimes, or democratic regimes. I put those in quotes partly because the value judgments we associate with democracy and dictatorships are very different when it comes to corporations. Dictatorial, at least. And that's what he's trying to say. Uh, when we're talking about management of a country, we know that dictatorship is not good, right? But over there, the management works for the entire country. At least that's the idea. In companies, management or board works for the shareholders. If I own 90% of the company, I mean, I could have sold 10% of my company, but I still own 90% of the company. So I'm going to worry more about my own interests. So, in that sense, being dictatorial may or may not be a bad thing. Democratic sometimes actually turns out not that useful for corporations, and I'll give you some examples. But the way the companies are managed, shareholders elect board of directors in annual meetings. Each share, unless otherwise specified, has one vote. It's not like a regular democracy, one person, one vote, right? In corporation elections, one share is one vote for most companies. Certain companies have multiple classes of shares. For example, Google, they have founder shares. These are Larry and Sergey, so-called Google guys. These guys have about 10 times more votes per their own share compared to others. Yeah. That means they can essentially own, let's see, only about 10% of the company and still control any votes. There are two more classes. In fact, they have different tickers. One of them is Goog, the other is Goog L. I don't remember which one, but one of them does not have any voting power. And the other one does. In fact, I don't even have to know Which one of these has voting power? The ticker that is slightly more expensive has voting power because you can have an influence on the results. In fact, we can check. Let's see. Come on. This is 168.79. 166.73, which means the ticker Goog has voting power, the other doesn't. But in terms of claims to cash flow, they're not different. Google has not paid any dividends since it was established, but if next year they decided they're going to pay $10 share dividend, the Google guys who have 10 times more voting power, Google that has voting power, and Google Health that doesn't, they will all receive the same $10. So there's no difference in terms of rights to the cash flow, but they created a difference in terms of controlling the elections. Now, there are many election types as well. One is called straight elections. Every open seat is voted separately. The candidate with the most votes wins. Which means if you have 50% plus one share, one voting share, I should say, you can control the entire board. So these are essentially dictatorships. I only may own only slightly higher than half of the company, or may own slightly higher than half of the votes. For example, Mark Zuckerberg does not own more than 10+% of Facebook, but he controls the entire firm. Why? Because his shares have a lot more voting power. He just doesn't want the outsiders to make the decisions for him. That does not necessarily mean that these guys are not going to have any outside board memberships. Sometimes, either for social and political reasons, they allow independent outside directors, maybe for the purposes of public relations, but it is up to the majority to decide whether or not that's going to happen. Google is one of those companies, some other companies don't. Certain companies have what's called cumulative voting. Each share is endowed with number of votes That is the same as the number of open seats. And they can distribute those any way they like. Suppose there are 4 open seats. If I own only 1 share of this company, I'm given 4 votes. I could choose to give all those 4 votes for one candidate. I could distribute them equally across 4 candidates. I could do 2 on 2, 1 3, what have you. Hence, if I own I can guarantee 1 seat for myself. Let's kind of see that. Let's say